The Office of Management and Budget says agencies should buy from best-in-class contracts wherever they can, but low prices on those contracts doesn't always make them the best. Larry Allen is president of Allen Federal Business Partners and writing about best-in-class contracts in the Week Ahead newsletter. Larry, it's great to see you. Give me the thumbnail quickly on what a best-in-class contract is, because it seems like every time I ask a procurement professional, I get a different answer.
Francis, best-in-class contract is an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract that has been classified by the Office of Management and Budget to meet certain criteria. Some of those criteria are objective, like low price. But beyond low price, industry would argue anyway, we start getting into some subjective criteria. It may be the contract vehicles that are most popular with the Office of Management and Budget, and the agencies that have done the best sell job on OMB to convince them that their contract programs hit all the marks.
Interesting nugget in your newsletter. Total dollars flowing through best-in-class vehicles have risen, but that spending has really only kept pace with overall increases in contracting. Contractors that hear the buy best-in-class message have to ask themselves whether they're hearing a reason or an excuse. What's the difference, Larry?
Well, if you're in federal sales at all, or even general sales, Francis, a reason is an actual, real thing that means I can't buy from you because you don't have this particular vehicle. That's a reason. An excuse is I can't buy from you because you don't have this vehicle, but I'm going to turn right around and buy from somebody who I like better, who may also not have a vehicle that's considered best in class. If you're a salesperson, you can work with a reason. You can get to a reasonable conclusion with most customers. With an excuse, that's kind of the door slamming in your face, and it's going to be very difficult to pick that conversation back up.
Yeah, it's hard to see how you overcome that objection. How do you make sure that it is a reason and not an excuse? What can one do if one is not on one of these best-in-class contracts?
Well, Francis, I think really what you're looking at here is the numbers. You talked about the total dollars going up, but the percentage of dollars flowing through best-in-class contracts remains the same at about 7%. That's been constant since at least 2016. By the way, these just aren't Larry Allen's numbers. No one, and for good reason, would trust Larry Allen math. These are numbers put forth by Bloomberg government. And if you look at this and you're a contractor that doesn't have a best-in-class contract, well, you kind of maybe want to look towards getting on, or at least having your products or services represented on one of these. But it apparently is not going to be the huge roadblock to federal business that OMB and others would have you believe. If 7% of the spend is going through best-in-class contracts, that means that 93%, by my count, is going through something else. What's it going through? It's going through another indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract that buyer feels more comfortable with, that the seller feels more comfortable with, probably a vehicle that they've used before and they know how to manage their acquisition. And it may be a vehicle that the contractor recommended to the buyer. If you're a contractor, there's no reason why you shouldn't recommend one or two acquisition methods to your buyer. That's part of the business development process. And if they're thinking best-in-class contract and you don't have one, trying to convince them to use something that maybe is better but not officially best is something that your sales team can pull off.
A quick fact check, Larry. You did get that last one right. 93 and 7 does still equal 100. Who needs to do what if the point of this is to use these vehicles? Who has to do what to get that number off 7%?
Well, history has shown, Francis, that central directives, such as the one coming here from the Office of Management and Budget, don't always play well throughout the federal government. It's a big government. It's very diverse. It's across the country, indeed across the world, and it's tough to get people to always sign on to something that comes from Washington, even though we all think we're mighty important here. So I think if you're going to solve the best-in-class issue, you're going to have to empower officials at the local level, officials that are in regional offices and federal agencies and make them both accountable and incentivized to use best-in-class contracts. It is indeed a mix of the traditional carrot and stick process, but you're not going to be able to get it done from sitting in Washington. It's that person who's located out at the federal office center in Denver that you're going to have to convince, and you're going to have to make it worth their while.
We're starting to run out of time, Larry, but the terminology here is something that I know drives people who are outside Washington completely crazy about the government. Why not make them all best in class?
Well, indeed, we've heard a lot about that, and there's an argument, I think, to be made for that, Francis. If you look at the GSA multiple award schedule program, naming just one contract, there are certain schedules, there are certain parts of that schedule that are deemed best in class, but there are others that are not. And yet GSA in 2020 did what? They went through a schedule consolidation. So how, if you are a federal buyer, are you supposed to figure out, is this specific schedule best in class, or is the one 2 backyards over best in class? So I think there's a strong argument to say, look, best in class is a minimum set of criteria that you need, and we would not have allowed an IDIQ contract to be put in place if we didn't think it was best.
Larry Allen, thanks very much as always. Great to have you on.
Francis, thank you.